Okay, perfect. For the sake of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm sure we'll have some stragglers come in over the next course of the webinar. But again, my name is Tony Nelson. I am a sales engineer here with TerraSky. And if you could, everybody will be muted. Just ask your questions in the chat panel on the right-hand side. We'll have a Q&A session at the end where you can ask any questions, and then we'll actually walk through those live on the webinar. So today's agenda, we're going to be covering Salesforce layouts within SkyVisualEditor and the search template. Those are going to be the two primary areas that we focus on. But I'm also going to incorporate a lot of the new features that have come up over the course of version 3.6, which was released last week, throughout this demonstration. So some of the ones that we'll be including are going to be the inline editing, filtered by viewing user, so any of that data that needs to be filtered. And then we're going to have, oh, there we go, dynamic table filtering. So what that will mean, it has the ability to type in information, and it will dynamically filter out related content based on what they're typing. And then the last one will be what we call a code block component that's brand new, which basically allows you to add in any of your custom code. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into the actual demonstration on things. So let me jump into Salesforce here. Now, for those of you who have not used SkyVisualEditor before, it is two parts. One of them is a design studio, and the other part is an actual package that you download from the App Exchange. So you can go to the App Exchange, search for SkyVisualEditor or Visualforce, and we'll pop up there. And then it will ask you to register with our platform, which is SkyVisualEditor, and you can sign in, and once you do, you'll be prompted with this design studio. Now, after you go into the design studio, the first thing that you'll see is this little pop-up window that asks you to enter in your Salesforce credentials. So let me just go ahead and do that. And what this is going to do is allow you to connect into your Salesforce organization so that we can actually retrieve all of the data structures inside of your organization without you having to understand how all of that works. Our design studio is meant to be set up for people who are not developers, but developers are welcome to get in here, use it. We have a lot of great functionality for them as well. So let's go ahead and go File, Load Page Layout. We're going to have a new area where you're able to select an object, and in here you can either search for the object based on the label or API name, your choice. In this case, I'm just going to filter it out based on the account, and then select the particular record type that I'd like to use as a starting point. Now what this is going to do is it's going to retrieve the record layout that you have inside of Salesforce today and display it as a Visualforce page inside of our studio. On the far left-hand side are all the fields and components that you can drag onto the canvas to make some changes. The far right-hand side are all the properties that you can make changes as you go. And then the center of the page, this is the actual Visualforce page that you'll see when you deploy it into your environment. The first thing that we should do is probably move out of the two-column view that's inside of Salesforce. So in order to do that, you can select the section. We'll choose the account information. And on the right-hand side, there's a columns property. You can increase that to a 3, and you'll have a third column, or a 4 or 5, however many columns you need. And then you can move the columns, or I guess the fields, to the appropriate column by simply dragging and dropping to the necessary location. And once you've done this, then you can, as you can see, there will just be a simple process, much like you have inside of the page layout editor that's in Salesforce today. Let's also make some changes around maybe coloring. So if we wanted to, one of these sections, and on the right-hand side go to the color settings, then we can choose a background color for a couple of leaves. Let's just do maybe red for this one. And you can go ahead and change interior segments to be color-coded. Not every company wants this, but it is something that you have the capabilities of with Visualforce. Another thing to point out with SkyVisualEditor, there is a difference between what we refer to as a data table and what Salesforce refers to as a related list, because they have a difference in the Visualforce code themselves. So if you notice down here at the bottom, there's open activity and then like the vehicle section. The vehicle portion is known as a data table. And the bottom section where it's open activities, these are known as related lists. A related list is locked down by Salesforce. You can't change it and modify it. Salesforce has got very strict rules and requirements around what can be done with those. However, some objects can be leveraged as data tables in which we have full control over. So anything that is able to be leveraged as a data table, you'll see inside of these types of areas up here at the top. Otherwise, it'll be listed as a related list down at the bottom, and it's locked down by Salesforce. So we'll be using some of these as we go through. What I'm going to do next is add on what we call a tab component. So tab on the left, and you'll see a series of fields and components on the left-hand side, one of which is the tab. So we can drag that onto the canvas. I'm going to rename this first tab by selecting it. There's a title property on the right-hand side. So I'll just call this my contact data. Call that contact data. And then as I click off of that, I'm then going to scroll down, retrieve my contact related list, drag it into that section. So now that I've done this, what we've taken the related list that was at the bottom of the page, and we have basically moved it to the top section for the user to then find it inside of interior tabs. So it's going to be very quick and easy to navigate to from a user experience perspective. Now, some of the new additions that we've done to the tables, and I'll highlight these. These are 2 from version 3.6. In my opinion, I think they're quite game-changing in terms of what kind of functionality you can offer to your users. Now, before I get into that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the full name column by simply right-clicking and deleting. And I'm going to insert in a first name and a last name. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I want the user to be able to create contacts at the exact same time they're creating an account record. And that is something that you can do with SkyVisualEditor, consolidate all the data entry into a single screen. So the way we would do this is go to the Object tab on the left-hand side. We want to find the Related Object tab, choose the Contact Related List. Now this list, by the way, is only going to show you related objects that are actually on the page. It's not the full list because those don't yet exist on the page. So we try to keep it very simple for you to figure out what you actually can and can't use on a Visualforce page. I'm then going to filter out by name, drag the first name onto the canvas and the last name. Now that I've done this, the user's got all the capabilities they need to actually create those records. But I'm going to take it one step further. I want the user to be able to filter data out very quickly and easily to find the records they have. As an example, there are several times where we may be accessing an account record here at TerraSky, and we have 50 to 100 contacts that we're working with at a company, and I only need to see the contacts that have certain titles or that I've had communications with over the past maybe month or two, and you can't really do that with the native pages. But it is something that you can do with the new functionality we've created that's called client-side filtering. So if you look at the right-hand side, there's a lot of checkboxes available for our data tables, one of which is client-side filter. So if you check that box, you'll now notice above the first name there's another box that's appeared, and this is where the user is actually going to type in values when the page is deployed, and it will filter out this list of data to only show the values that have that content inside. So I'll show that in just a little bit. The next thing that I'm going to do is I want to filter out all the contacts to only show me the records that I have created. Now this is previously something that was a little more tricky to do with SkyVisualEditor. We've simplified that whole process. And the way you now do it is by adding an aware clause that's going to filter this based on the viewing user. So here we have 2 different methods of adding an aware clause. You can either do it with the graphical representation at the top. Personally, if you're not a developer, use that section. Or if you are a developer and more comfortable with SOQL queries, feel free to use the bottom editor at your own risk, but it is available to you. So the next thing that you can do is go ahead and add in a search requirement. So you can click Add. It's going to ask how you would like to filter this data. In this case, I want it done by the created by ID. So I only want to see the records that I have created. And then I'm going to say based on user ID being equal to my. Now, the way this is going to work is it's a variable that SkyVisualEditor has added into the platform. So to access that variable, you're going to have the open squiggly bracket, then user ID, just like this, and then close squiggly bracket. Now what this is going to do is access that variable that we have created inside of SkyVisualEditor and allow you to be able to navigate directly to the user ID so that you don't have to really go through and do all that coding. There is a video tutorial on this exact feature and function set that you can watch on our website as well in case you happen to forget that syntax. So go ahead and click Done, and that will allow you to filter out based on the viewing user. Now we're going to do a couple of other things in these tabs. Tab number 2, what we're going to do is add in the additional information section to it and then conditionally render that portion. So if you've ever had users that have requested that certain sections of your page only be shown when a certain value is true, maybe it's not relevant until something has been checked or a certain pick list value has been selected, that happens all the time. So what you can do is select this additional information section here, and on the right-hand side there's a display settings. So you can click the ellipsis, and it's now going to give you several options for how you can work with things. Again, one is a non-developer and one is a developer method. I'm going to show you the non-developer method for the sake of time. And you'll basically choose a field. We'll choose, let's say, industry. And we'll say if industry equals agriculture, then we want that section to appear. Otherwise, keep that section hidden. It's not relevant to non-agriculture industries for the user experience sake. In tab number 3, what we can do is we can add in maybe a developer component. Let's navigate down to this. So there is a new developer component that has replaced our old one. This is now called the code block. And essentially what it's going to do is allow you to add in your raw code directly into a page, and it's going to display that code for you. So if I, as an example, add and embed a YouTube video inside of here, it's now going to show me the raw code inside of the studio. This previously was not the case. It previously just showed a box that said that your code was here. You didn't really get to see and interact with that. And the reason that this is an upgrade and a step up from what we previously had is the fact that with this new functionality, this new component, we then can embed components inside of your custom code. So if you have something that maybe SkyVisualEditor doesn't handle or doesn't support and you want to add that code in, and then later on you find out, oh, there is a section that SkyVisualEditor can support, you can drag and drop our components inside of your custom code now and mix and match the two. So you get the best of both worlds in this particular case. So to illustrate that, I can take one of these fields and drop it inside of that custom code that I've created, and there's one of my custom fields that I've displayed without the label. Okay, and I'm going to move that back out here. Now what we then can do is make some additional changes. Let's say down here, maybe for the opportunity, what we want to do is add in the ability to bulk edit. So on the right-hand side, another feature that's really commonly used is the mass edit functionality. And the way you go around doing this is simply checking the box for bulk edit, and you'll give the user the capability of mass editing any given record that's in this environment. So you can select multiple records, bulk edit, bulk delete. It's kind of a bad thing to give most users, mass delete functionality, but nonetheless, you can do it if that's something that's really necessary. Once you're done modifying your page, you then can go ahead and select File, Deploy. You're going to send this into the environment that you need. So in my case, I'm going to send it to a test environment and click Deploy. Now what this is going to do is it's going to create the Visualforce page, any Apex extensions that you've created inside of our studio, and then an Apex extension that we've created to handle all of that functionality that you've enabled inside of the studio, and we deploy all of that into your environment without you having to write a single line of code. Now in this case, when it's done deploying, you're going to be given the Visualforce name and the Apex name. These are editable, so you'll want to change these to something that's meaningful to your company. But go ahead and click Open. Now you're going to see the Visualforce page that we created in just a minute or two. And as you can see across the top, we do have the 3-column change. Let's actually open up a record here so you can see live data in this. We'll open up the typical gene point record that exists in Salesforce. And let me grab that record ID. And we'll add it to the end of this. So we do the question mark, ID equals, paste in that record ID, and here is that gene point record opened on the Visualforce page. Okay, so here's some of the records that we were utilizing. As you can see, we've got the 3 columns across the top with the black banner change, the contact data. If you notice, there's the filter results now above first name. So as an example, if I wanted to filter by VP, it's now going to dynamically filter out that content based on what the user's typing. And this will go for any field that's in existence on the data table. So whether it's a date field, a monetary value, an email, doesn't matter. You're able to filter out, and it can find any of that content that's in any of those columns that are listed. So it really helps the user filter out data without you as an administrator having to add in multiple sets of the same related list for the sake of having a couple of filters applied. The second one, if you notice in tab 2, this is where that red box with additional information was. Now I have tied it to the industry field, so if I select the drop-down menu and choose agriculture, that section will now appear for the user to work with. So as you can see, as that changes, the additional information section will appear, and then if you switch it off of that, again, it will disappear based on the user not needing that data. So it's a great way of hiding or showing data based on another field's value. And then the third section was that custom code block component that we've created. And again, this is a YouTube video from one of the webinar series that we've created, and I simply embedded that YouTube video inside of the Visualforce page. But this is a real brief example of how you would actually create a page, start to scratch, using some of that new functionality that we've created. Now, if you're wondering, where is the inline editing? Well, if you notice, this page is all a display, or this is an edit-only page. And inline editing is really only useful if you're on a display-only page, like you typically see when you first click on a record inside of Salesforce. So to get that same replication inside of SkyVisualEditor, what you would do is go to Tools, Convert, and if you notice, it's going to give you the same page name, but there's now an underscore view that's been appended to the name. Go ahead and click OK. What this is going to do is it's going to take all of your input fields, convert them to output fields, and change your Save button to an Edit and Delete button. And this is going to give you that full functionality that you need. Every customization that you've made on the Edit screen now carries over to your display screen, and you haven't had to do any extra work. It was simply 2 clicks, and you're done. Now, where you actually go and enable the inline editing is by clicking on the Page tab on the right-hand side, and in the Page Property section at the top that's currently expanded, there is Enable Inline Edit checkbox. So simply check that box, and we can go to File, Deploy, and send that into the appropriate environment. So this is a great way for you to be able to enable that very fast for your users. But if you like, you can also keep the edit and the display versions of the pages separate. For those of you that like to keep them the exact same, you may just want to create a display-only version, enable inline editing, and the user doesn't have to do very much. Partially because one of the things that we do with our inline editing is we also allow your users to inline edit related lists that are on the page, which is typically not something that you can do. So it really does enable the user to get a full experience that they don't normally have for speed of data entry. So let's just grab that IDA one more time. So here's the display-only version. So go ahead and paste that back in and open that record inside of this page. So as you can see here, it's the display-only, but as I hover over a field, I can edit any of these fields. You simply double-click, and it's now going to give you the capability of inline editing any of that data. Now, if you notice at the top, just because I've done that, the Edit button didn't change to a Save button like Salesforce typically has on the page. So one thing I'm going to recommend that you do is either put the Save button on the page, or you can add in the appropriate JavaScript so that as the user double-clicks this, it'll change your Edit button to a Save button. But that is company preference, so we don't enforce that on you. Also, notice in the Contact section, if I wanted to, I can double-click on Edna Frank, and then I can edit that related list directly in line. And then as I click Save, it'll save the account data and also any related content that we've inline modified so that they can quickly do all of the necessary changes without having to open 5 or 6 records to individually change 1 or 2 fields across the board. So again, a lot of this functionality is meant to streamline the user experience and to help you as an administrator give them what they need faster and easier without having to cause much headache. So let's cover the last portion here, and this is going to be what we call our search template. Now the search template is designed to give you an experience where, let's do account again. On this particular section, what it's going to do is it's going to provide you an environment where you can give your users a section to freely find the data that they need. Now to show this, let's go to an accounts page. I have this set as the default page when a user clicks on the account tab inside of our environment, and it takes them to a search screen. Now what this will do is it gives the user, like myself, filter criteria across the top where I can find the relevant contacts for me. So if I want to search and find all the companies that have got between 10,000 and, what is that, or something like that, I can quickly find those subset of data, identify the records, and then open up that record from there. Again, I also have the capability of mass editing, doing inline edit changes, whatever I need to do from a quick retrieval of data, modification, and then saving that information. So it just takes that advanced searching to the next level with all the mass editing that's available. And the way you set that up is the first section inside of this tool is going to ask you for the filter criteria. And we have two different kinds. We have ranges and we have the field filter criteria. The range is going to be similar to what I did with annual revenue, where it's between a value and another value. The field, the section here where it says field criteria, that's going to be an equivalency check. So does owner ID equal Tony Nelson, as an example? So it's not quite a value range, it's more of an equivalency check. Is a value greater than or equal to something? So we'll choose for this top section where the range, we'll select annual revenue and maybe the number of employees that that company has. You can then increase the number of columns that the data has displayed across the top. I'll leave it at 2 for now. And then the filter criteria for the field, the equivalency check ones, we'll just choose a couple of these. We'll say if the account number is equal to a certain value, or if a company is active or inactive, we want to be able to search that. And then maybe if annual revenue is greater than or equal to a certain value, we want to find those as well. Then the next thing that's going to happen is it's going to ask how you'd like to interact with the results that are retrieved. By default, Salesforce typically has everything in reference-only mode. However, with SkyVisualEditor, you can either have it reference-only, edit-only, or a combination. So reference table is display-only, editable is edit-only, and then complex is the mixture. So I'll choose complex. Next thing it's going to ask is, do you want the user to be able to add a record if they don't find data that they're looking for? So as an example, if I searched for companies that have between 10,000 and $10 billion in revenue and I didn't find any in our system, should I be able to add in a new account to properly insert that data into Salesforce? In this case, I do want the user to be able to do that, but I don't necessarily want them to be able to clone or anything else like that. So I'll just choose the paging. We'll select that to 100 records per page and click Next. This third step is going to ask what kind of columns do you want displayed in the results set. And again, these can be a mixture of input and output fields. And in this case, what I'd like to do is have maybe account name. We'll do account number is editable. The account ID we'll have over here, but I want it display only. So the O is display only, the I is input. So you can kind of mix and match, and then you can rearrange the columns as needed. Once you have the appropriate sections in here, you can add any custom buttons or links that you'd like, and then click Done. Now what this is going to do is it's going to generate that page for you that you then can interact with inside of Salesforce. You can assign these pages to any location that you'd like. So if you have an app that you're building out that you want to have these pages included on, that's fine. If you're like me and you simply want to include that inside of a tab, that's also okay. You can assign it to a Visualforce tab or override a view inside of Salesforce. So with that, those are the two primary sections that we were listing out. And